The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Good afternoon and welcome to Chit-Chatting with Jocelyn. I'm so glad you could join us here today. My guest is Dr. David Strang. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we are going to dive into the Windham incident, which has now become, Stepford Wives 103. I mean, this is just, it's insane. Because the actual purpose of what Windham was all about has become just so fraught with rumors and accusations and who's right and who's wrong and who's running this and who's running that, that what you and Senator Bob Guida started here in the studio discussing with me back when everything was still hot and heavy and getting the facts out and getting the information to the Senate and the Secretary of State and the AG's office and figuring out what's going on and who needs to fix this, we have dissolved into this pot of, I don't know what it is. So
more controversy.
It's nuts. So let's start where we left off last time. You had updated us to the bill.
SB 43.
SB 43, thank you. Senator Guida was taking forth to the legislature. Let's start from there.
So SB 43 was an effort led by Senator Guida to compel the Attorney General and the Secretary of State jointly to investigate this Windham voting incident. I won't go back over all the details. I think most of your viewers already know what that is. Mm-hmm. It came out of the Senate 24-0. I thought that was a monumental effort. There's very little that comes out of the Senate unanimously. Yeah. It was supposed to go directly to the House floor for an expedited vote, but the Democrats objected and they insisted that it go through the usual House committee assignment first. So it went to the House Election Law Committee, where it was strengthened. And it came out of that committee 20-0 unanimously, nice. Where it then went to the House floor and was passed on the consent calendar, which is where they send legislation that is likely to have no opposition. Mm-hmm. Now, any member of the legislature can pull it off the consent calendar. No one did.
No one did.
So it passed the House floor unanimously in that strengthened version. It went back to the Senate for concurrence because it had been changed, where they agreed 24-0. So think about this. This bill went through the entire New Hampshire legislature with no opposition. I've been a New Hampshire resident for 26 years. I can't remember anything coming through the legislature with no opposition.
That many times.
And then it went to the governor, who signed it without opposition on April 12th. Mm-hmm. The clock started ticking that day. We have 45 days to get this audit done, which means May 27th is our drop dead date. Okay.
So it comes out from the governor. He signed it. So the next step is, according to the bill, that the Windham residents / Windham Selectmen's Committee, whatever the proper terminology is, makes a decision for a group, a company, an individual to participate and do that part of the audit.
Yes, there's 3 analysts that have to be chosen to make up the forensic audit team. The Secretary of State and Attorney General jointly choose one.
Okay.
Windham chooses a second, and then those 2 analysts jointly choose a third.
Oh,
that makes up the team. And they're not just choosing one person; they're making a selection.
Each one of those make a selection. So there's going to be 3 auditors, 3 companies, 3 persons.
Correct.
doing this. Okay.
So the Windham Board of Selectmen asked for input from the town residents. So they held a meeting on Monday, April 19th, a week after the bill had been signed, to listen to input from the town residents and also to accept presentations from interested parties. So Doug Logan from Cyber Ninjas presented, Colonel Phil Waldron from a group called ASOG presented, and then Dr. Andrew Appel and Dr. Mark Lindeman from Verified Voting jointly presented, along with, there was another group called, I believe, Gold Sky.
Sounds right, yeah.
And a couple
of
people,
individuals, yeah.
A couple of individuals who clearly were way in over their head, didn't realize it, but then later dropped out and withdrew their name. So the three that really rose to the top were Colonel Phil Waldron's group, ASOG, Cyber Ninjas, and the joint group of Dr. Andrew Appel and Verified Voting.
Verified Voting.
So, and immediately there was controversy with this because the April 19th Board of Selectmen meeting was public, but they had announced via the town administrator on April 13th that they had determined that they were going to meet in a non-public session on Monday, April 26th to discuss their choice and vote. Well, this doesn't qualify for a non-public session.
Correct.
There's very few reasons under RSA 91A, which is the right to know law, that allows a deliberating body, such as a Board of Selectmen, to meet in a secret non-public session, to accept advice from your attorney, for example, because everyone has heard of attorney-client privilege.
Right.
That would be an acceptable
Or to
reason.
speak about an employee is usually done behind closed doors. But this clearly wasn't.
If you're going to discuss, I like this group because of this reason, and I'm not such a fan because of that reason, and then vote, that doesn't qualify for a non-public session. On top of that, this email from the town administrator said the Board of Selectmen had determined. That means they made a decision, which means they had to discuss, and this was never on the agenda for any prior meeting. So that meant that the Board of Selectmen was meeting and making decisions in private, which
secret,
is a big no-no.
Yeah.
There was enormous public outcry to this, and
Rightly so.
appropriately,
Yeah.
they said, okay, we're going to hold our deliberations and vote in public, which they did this past Monday, April 26th. Now, only 4 of the 5 selectmen showed. I don't know why Jennifer Simmons did not attend. But of the 4 who were there, 3 decided that they preferred the bid put in by Dr. Andrew Appel and Dr. Lindeman from Verified Voting. 1 selectman, Bruce Breton, asked to have Jovan Pulitzer selected. He did not present Monday night the 19th, but did submit a presentation later on in the week.
Which he did.
Which he did.
Okay. All right. So they chose Verified Voting.
Correct.
And just to clear everything up, the second gentleman, not Mr. Appel, Mr. Lindeman,
Correct.
was the person who on the 19th, on the Monday the 19th, had an incident. He had a medical incident.
Correct.
And he passed out.
Correct.
It's not a secret. Everybody saw it, so it's public knowledge. You, as being an ER physician, and there was another lady there who was an ICU nurse, rushed to help him immediately. We're not going to go into any details, but he was transported to the hospital.
Correct.
The part that has been glossed over is he never got to answer questions that others had put to them. He was not able to fully finish his presentation. Consequently, because of that, a whole bunch of rumors and miscommunications and just garbage has been bandied about that he is this and he is that and we don't want this and this isn't that. The man never got to answer the questions.
Correct.
Jovan did get to answer the questions, the other people did. I think, it might be prudent to allow him to answer those questions now that he's better.
Yeah, the night of the 19th, anyone interested was able to make a presentation as to why they would be the best choice for the town. And while those groups were presenting, the selectmen appropriately came up with 5 or 6 follow-up questions that they wanted answered. And when it came time for verified voting to do that, Mr. Lindeman was supposed to come to the microphone, and he was unconscious in his seat in the auditorium. I actually went to his side along with this ICU nurse, and only upon putting him flat on the floor did he come to. And there have been people who have been critical. Well, why didn't he answer these questions? Because he was unconscious. And I even read a write-up today from Human Events where they said he, quote, appeared fine after he came to. Well, while he was lying flat on the floor, he was, and as soon as we sat him up, his blood pressure plummeted.
Tanked. Yep.
And if he had gone up to the microphone, he would have passed out again. So this is the frustrating part to me, is that nobody does any investigative journalism anymore. They take one snippet, one little bit of half-truth that they hear from somebody, and they run with it, and they write a story about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Appel did the best job he could after watching his colleague pass out. He did the best job he could answering these questions, but he was clearly rattled.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know if they subsequently gave a more thorough answer to those questions. You'd have to ask that of the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
But a lot of people are unhappy with the choice. Apparently, Dr. Lindeman signed on to a letter that was critical of the Arizona audit. I think it's a valid question to ask him. Why was he critical of that? I can tell you, though, when I was doing my research back in December, trying to convince the Attorney General to investigate this, I came across a write-up of our AccuVote voting machines that was written by Verified Voting, and it was highly critical of our machines. It indicated that they could be corrupted, that they could easily be broken into with very basic tools.
Yes.
It was not a complimentary write-up. So for those people who think that Verified Voting is in the tank to suddenly whitewash this audit,
Based
I'm
on
just not
based
seeing
on
that.
one letter, when there is a second letter, a second report that very clearly points fingers at the optical scanners, the
Correct.
AccuVotes here in New Hampshire,
Correct.
which on the Secretary of State's website says Dominion.
And if anybody wants to verify what I just said, Google AccuVote OSX voting machine, and in the first 3 or 4 hits, look for the one from Verified Voting. Read it. It's highly critical of our machines.
So we'll let that one lie right there. You know, I run my shows and people say, "Oh, you got to stick to fact." This is a fact. People are running around saying this is a fact. It's a rumor, it's hearsay, it's their belief. I feel my job. I feel that we need to talk about these things. Everybody likes to yell at each other and hit each other over the head with it. We need to dispel these or prove them or otherwise. And that is a fact. Go look it up. Go Google it. There is a second letter. Read it. They were critical of what's going on here. So they are an appropriate choice. But we have 2 more choices.
We have
Here's
2 more
the thing.
choices, but Jocelyn, I have heard, I've had emails and texts from people saying, this is in the tank. We have 2 universities who are going to run this audit because Dr. Appel is a professor at Princeton, and he has an associate from MIT, which is where Governor Sununu went to school, and therefore this is collusion. Folks, MIT and Princeton are not running the audit. That just happens to be in the credentials for some of the people who will be doing this. No one is happy with this, and I'm getting the impression that we could have, you know, Christ the Immaculate Election Auditors, Inc. being chosen on Monday, and somebody would be unhappy with this. We've got 1 of 3 analysts chosen. No one's touched a ballot. No one's looked at a machine. No one's issued any finding, much less written a report.
Nobody's touched the memory boards.
I think it's a bit early to say that this effort has been a failure.
Right. When
Senator
we have 2
Guida and
more
I didn't spend
choices.
5 months fighting to get this done.
No, you didn't.
Only to have this baton
Rabble
dropped right before
rousers
the anchor leg, you know.
screaming to see who could scream the loudest.
Correct.
You know, read the letter.
Absolutely.
Do your due diligence before you run off at the mouth. So we now have the Secretary of State with the AG, the Attorney General, to make a second choice.
Correct.
And then verified voting, and whoever the Secretary and AG's choice is, they each will choose the third person.
Correct. And what
I
was-
don't know how much fairer it could be, to be perfectly honest.
Well, and what was very clear from the presenters on Monday night the 19th at the Windham Board of Selectmen's meeting was that the field of forensic election auditor is a very narrow field. All of these guys know each other. Very frequently, they work together on the same team when they're doing an audit, whether it's the current one in Maricopa County or Antrim County in Michigan. So they all know their strengths and weaknesses. So
And they know who to reach out to.
and they know who
so
to
they
reach out
could
to.
reach out to Jovan. That's not, he's not been thrown in jail and never to come out again. One of them could say, hey, this is his expertise. I really would like him to help with it. Nobody's going to say no.
Correct.
So, I mean, to say that it's, this isn't going to happen is ridiculous.
It absolutely is. And I would think that the two analysts are going to look at each other and say, okay, we're a little weak on actual paper ballots. Maybe Mr. Pulitzer would be the best one to bring in. He's not making a good case for himself because he's insulting the people who are voting, potentially going to vote for him. So
right.
I hope he hasn't disqualified himself from consideration.
I hope not too. And because a forensic audit is not only the machines and that the ballots are being counted, it is also the ballots as well. Am I correct?
We want the ballots looked at. We want the machines looked at. We want the devices like the memory boards that run the machines. We want the process looked at. Was there something unusual? Do we suddenly have 300 or 1,000% more absentee ballots that only have a vote for the president? That would be very odd.
It would
Those
be.
are the sorts of things that we want to have looked at here and compared to historical numbers to see, yeah, there was something really weird. Maybe the machines counted accurately. Maybe suddenly we have all these absentee ballots, which were reported in other states to have no creases on them. Well, how could they be in an envelope and be voted absentee if they don't have a crease on them? I'm just throwing these out as examples.
But
I'm
that's
not saying
why
that
it's
this
a
is fact.
forensic audit.
That's why you need to look at this in order
Everything.
to explain the largest discrepancy between a machine and a hand recount in the history of our state.
Yep. I agree 100%. And I think this has to be, this is the best way to discuss it. This is your third time back here with me. Every single time we move the ball forward. We explain what's going on. There's nothing hidden. You have never hidden anything. Senator Gaida has not. He's busy man. He doesn't have time to come running down here to do this with me. And so you do that in his place. And I'm very appreciative of you doing this and letting the public know what's going on. And again, we need to look at, it is important that the Windham residents participate in this process, but we must not lose sight that this is a New Hampshire issue. It's not just about Windham. That is one piece. So however that lays out, we can't just stop there. Right?
Correct. It starts in Windham.
Correct.
Now,
Okay.
I understand that there are people who do not live in Windham who wanted to have input to an influence of the Board of Selectmen's decision. I'm not sure that that's the fairest way of doing this. If you were a Windham resident, would you want a resident from Manchester or Derry or Colebrook coming in and saying, you should do it this way. I want your Board of Selectmen to do that. Most people would say, stick to your own town. But because there is only one type of machine that is used in the 85% of towns that use machines to machine count in New Hampshire, this is a larger issue because if it's a machine issue rather than just a Windham issue, we need to know that.
And we need to look at the other towns with those machines.
Because think about this, the 15% of towns that hand count are the smaller towns. So that means that although 85% of towns machine count, they're being the larger towns, they count probably in excess of 95% of the votes cast in New Hampshire
And that's
are
significant.
therefore counted by this one type of machine. So if we have an issue with the machine as opposed to the machines in Windham, we need to know that.
Correct. I mean, that's just logical. That's an investigation.
Absolutely. And that's why we're doing this.
It does affect everybody. So everybody needs to, not get your pants in a twist. You need to sit down, you need to take a deep breath and let the process play out. Be aware of it. Don't stick your head in the sand, but be aware of the process, follow it along, and understand it. So we still have 2 more picks to go. That is
Correct.
supposed to be by tomorrow?
Well, I'm a little surprised that the Secretary of State hasn't announced his pick yet. I can tell you he's looking at some very highly qualified individuals. It's, not quite 5 o'clock here
I was going to
today.
look. I'm glad you did.
It's possible that he might have announced a pick yet, and I just haven't seen it.
Yep.
But I would hope before the end of the week he would have announced a pick so that those 2 analysts can start putting their heads together and decide on the third.
Who the
and
third
final
person
pick.
is, and then when the third person, when the third pick is made, so we have one. Let's say it's Monday or Tuesday. That would be nice. The clock's been ticking. They
has
then have to schedule this forensic audit
Correct.
and do it.
Correct.
So schedule it, actually do the audit, and then it goes. A report has to be made.
Correct.
But
Now-
that's another additional 45
That's an
days for the actual
additional
report.
45.
But
Correct.
this part must be done in the first 45 days. And that's bringing the ballots, deciding how the ballots are going to be divided, which machines they go through, blah, 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 all sorts of stuff.
How many
in less
people
than
you
45,
need to,
how many
to
people
do
you need,
that?
yep.
We have the House, the 4 House races to be hand counted. We have the U.S. Senate race to be hand counted. We have the governor's race to be hand counted. So that's actually 6 races that have to be hand counted. We've got to look at potentially 60,000 votes amongst those 6 seats.
Wow.
And then we've got to look at the machines. Then we've got to take the ballots and feed them through the machines. We want to look at the ballots. Is there something unusual about them? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not to mention scheduling that. For
Right.
example, if someone needs to analyze the ballots first, do they need only them to be touching the ballots for 2 or 3 days to get that done before we start taking them and putting them through the machines
Right.
as is required in the legislation? So a lot needs to be worked out. And we
Now-
only got 4 weeks from today to get this done.
That's not a lot of time.
No.
The clock's ticking.
Yes,
And I think somebody knows that. And I think we need to
we do.
hold their feet to the fire. Just telling you. So how do you feel about the legislation? You explained to us that it was strengthened. The Senate and the committees were all very happy about this. It passed. Nobody voted against it. Did it go far enough? Are you happy with it?
I am happy with it. I think we did a great job of suggesting language. The town of Windham convened an election integrity committee, which passed their choices on to the House Election Law Committee as to what they wanted to have done in that. We specifically asked for input from the Board of Selectmen because we didn't want this to be a state-only effort. So
Right.
we wanted the town, because this is where this started, to have input. So I'm happy with the legislation. I've actually spoken with Doug Logan from Cyber Ninjas, who was very impressed with our legislation. He said, I'm actually going to suggest that other states do what you did, which was have 3 separate picks. Even Governor Sununu gave us some kudos when it came
Good.
to the actual language in the legislation. There's a lot of people who are trying to find the hole in this. I can tell you that I'm happy with the words there, and we're going to make sure that they're followed. We didn't want anyone either in town or at state saying, well, you can't do this. We don't want you looking at anything but that. No, the auditors will determine the process of
Good.
the audit. And if they say, we're going to image all of the ballots first, then they're going to image all of the ballots first. It's up to them to decide how to get the answers that we need in order to solve this problem.
I love it. When that is all said and done, so we need to get that done by the 45 days, and then there's 45 days for the report to be written.
Yes.
So, we're out there a little bit. I mean,
Yes.
that's beginning of July.
Yes. I mean, if there's one criticism I have with the language of the bill, maybe they should have given us 60 or 70 days. I can understand where the 45 came from. They didn't want the legislature or
drag out.
the audit to drag this out to September or October. So the House Election Law Committee actually inserted the 45 days.
It'd be nice if maybe it was 60, 30.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I know my math is a little
or-
fuzzy on that right now, but
Yeah.
if the process was 60 days and the report had less.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
I know, isn't it?
So
Yeah.
If for some reason we suddenly start getting court challenges like they're getting in Arizona,
Yes.
we do have the ability to go to court and get the clock stopped. But it would be nice not to have to
Not
do
to
that.
do. Let's move this forward. Let's
Yeah.
do the right thing. Let's stop, fiddling around. Let's everybody stop sticking their finger in the pot.
Yes.
Let it happen. Let the experts decide. If you want to be a cyber ninja, then go to school and get your degree and join them.
Yes.
It's great that everybody wants to be involved. It really is. But don't interfere with the process because we need to get this done. And all of this is interfering and upsetting, really upsetting what is a pretty much straightforward process. And I think you beautifully explained and that we've got 3 picks. And not we, but collectively there's 3 picks. So, wow.
And I think because we have a large number, a plethora of picks, for a little bit of alliteration there, we're going to get a great report. And I'm just would hope that people would calm down a little bit. Let's let the process play out. Let's see what kind of an audit team is assembled, and let's let them get to work. Again, there's very few forensic analysts out there to audit elections. We know who they are. We know what their track record is. The ones who are interested in helping us here in New Hampshire are very credible. So let's let the process play out.
I love it. So there you have it. You have got the true update on Windham, what is really going on. The curtains have been pulled back. We can now look at the man behind the curtain. We can see what he's doing, and he's not doing anything, dirty or deceiving or sneaky at this point. Keep your eyes open, pay attention. Remember, you need to take this information forward for the next election. We need to make sure that we keep the paper ballots in New Hampshire, which is by law, and that we do not use another machine again until this is put to bed. Demand it of your town. Don't buy new ones. Don't allow it. That's what your job is now. That is what you need to do. And you need to support this team and what's going on. Thank you for joining me, Jocelyn, on Chit Chatting, and thank you, Dr. David Strang, for joining me again.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciated being here.
Come back and keep us posted.
You bet.
Awesome.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.